Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm Jhaveri and I lead partnerships at Oculus. As many of you know, yesterday we announced the Oculus for Business program, and today for the first time, businesses can get out there and get a longer warranty, more customer support, and more kit in the box. We think that all of this is going to help everyone serve their customers much, much better. Now, the origin of this program actually kind of sits right in this room. Last Oculus Connect, I had a lot of people come up to me and say, hey, can we actually get a business license? How do we actually deploy this to our customers? And it took us some time to think through, how to approach this. But, between the folks in this room and the folks on this panel, I think we've gotten to a pretty good place here. We have a few different perspectives on the panel here that we pulled together. So we've got big companies like Procter&Gamble and Audi, and they're going to talk a little bit about how they're using VR. We've got enterprise app developers like Cisco talking to us how they see the future of VR. And then finally, independent developers who are out there serving businesses, building apps and experiences as well. So some housekeeping notes. I'm going to walk through, introduce the panelists. Before each of them sort of says something about what they're working on, we're going to show you a little clip of the experience that they've built, just so you have it sort of in your buffer. And then we'll jump into some questions, and then at the end, we'll make sure we leave some time for everyone to be able to ask any questions of the folks up here. So our first panelist is Derek Belcher, CEO of STRIVR. Let's see if this can work. Have a quick look at what STRIVR has built. Possibly. Maybe, maybe not. Were we supposed to show it in VR? Is that the problem?
When I first heard that Walmart would be using VR training in the academies, I thought it was awesome. It was really impressive, just at the level of investment that they were willing to put in the actual training piece of our associates.
You see everything that the customer sees. It makes you just actually feel like you're in the situation at that time, so you get that personal one-on-one training.
We would teach them how to cull and what to look for in the wet wall and how to crisp and produce. We used it on the front end. How do we capture shrink?
So Derek, tell us a little bit about STRIVR, where you started and what you've been doing with Walmart.
Sure. So STRIVR is about 2.5 years old. For those of you who don't know us, STRIVR still stands for, but originally stood for sports training and virtual reality, because we got our start working with NFL and college football teams. I was coaching at Stanford up the street, and my master's thesis while I was coaching for the football team was to come up with a way to train football players using VR. And after that was highly successful academically, decided to make a run at it and start a company. And for the first 1.5 years or so, we were exclusively focused on sports and training quarterbacks, linebackers, point guards, et cetera. And then the Walmart relationship started last summer. They randomly approached us, said we saw what you were doing in sports and we would love to talk about what we could do for employee training. And that relationship has been awesome so far, and it kind of catapulted us in not a different direction, but in a much larger direction, taking the formula we built for sports for training and applying it to enterprises of all sizes. So right now we're working with Walmart, we're working with a couple major auto manufacturers, major financial institutions. Some of this will be public, soon. United Rentals, so there's a lot going on in the space, but solely focused at this point and going forward on human performance using VR.
Cool. I look forward to hearing a little bit more about that randomness and how we put some structure around your pipeline over time. So next we have Hamza Abbas, director of Andrew Lucas Studios. Cool. So Hamza, Soho Boulevard Theatre has a long history in London. Can you tell us a little bit about the project and what we just saw?
So the Boulevard Theatre itself, it's been around since the 70s. And basically that part of Soho had been left as it was. And Soho Estates, which is the family that owns that part of Soho, wanted to redevelop and reignite that part of Soho. And so one of the things that they're working on, amongst a lot of other things, is of course this theater, which is one of the first in the world that can actually revolve. So what we did for this project was help the developer, the stage manufacturer, even the companies that are doing the furnishing, to help get together, collaborate, and actually design the theater in VR prior to sign-off, which it has, and well, construction has officially begun. So yeah.
Cool. Next, we have Ioana Matei, who's the VR lead at Procter&Gamble. Is that a snippet of something they've built?
So a test for you guys on which is our Procter&Gamble products. What would you buy?
So Ioana, Procter & Gamble is using VR in many different places within the enterprise. Can you tell us a little bit about the one we just saw and how you're thinking about VR holistically for your $60 billion enterprise?
Yes, and we also, like, if you think about it, Procter & Gamble was a startup 179 years ago, so a kind of big and old company. We are doing VR for more than 7 years now, maybe surprising for some of you. Using mainly in-house, as you saw also in the example. We use it mainly in 2 areas. One is for customer engagement. So we want to show our retailers how our new products will look on shelf or in the stores. Some of our retailers come to us and say, help me design the store, that I have better buying, shoppers will be more delighted. And the other area we are using is for consumer research. So instead of, in the old times, we're actually producing the prototypes of like products, packaging, and so on. It took a long time and local effort and quite high cost. Now we're doing it in VR. We can also do consumer research and see if the packaging stands out on shelf, if the user will buy it. So it's a huge operational improvement for us. And we're doing this for 7+ years.
Cool. Next, we have Andrew Payne, Senior Director at Cisco, who's working on Spark VR. Have a quick look at that.
The reason why we're looking into AR and VR right now in Immersion and for collaboration in general is because it has such a huge potential to solve a lot of the issues that we see with remote collaboration. We can create environments, we can create experiences that would not be possible otherwise. Currently, we're working on something that we call the Spark VR, and that's the virtual reality component of the existing Cisco Spark platform.
So Andy, tell us a little bit about Spark, sort of some of the goals you've set out with and what you're hoping to accomplish.
Sure. So Spark VR sits on top of Spark, which is Cisco's collaboration platform for messaging and meeting and calling. And we've been looking at the virtual reality space for a while and watching how it's being used and the potential there. And we thought it was time to do some experiments with pulling, team collaboration into virtual reality. So we built this as an experiment to see what that might be like, building on this collaboration platform and extending it into virtual reality. And we've tied it through to some of our non-virtual reality things like our SparkBoard device and things like that. But we've also brought into the app things that you can only do in virtual reality, like walk around a 3D model that you've shared with your team and talk about it and do those sorts of things. So it's an interesting way to, for people who collaborate in small team type scenarios to experiment with collaborating in VR.
And last but not least, Marcus Kuehne, who is a VR and immersive tech lead at Audi.
So I guess I can comment it already, so because it's not a prepared movie which shows the whole experience or explains it. This is the current visual quality we achieved at our application, which we introduced at the first 100 dealerships until end of this year, using the Oculus Rift, and people can see and configure all of their cars with all options. So we have more than 50 different models at the dealership in general, and we can't have them all at the dealership, especially not in all available configurations. And so finally, virtual reality is a gift for us to show the cars unexpected natural to customers. In the past, we had always the problem as all car manufacturers that people only come to the dealership to talk about the price. They made all the decisions at home. But that's not in our interest as a premium manufacturer. We want to have them at the dealership to give them good advice. And so it's not about upselling. It's also about service quality, consulting quality. And with VR, we give them a reason to spend some time at the dealership. And yeah, we're really thankful for this technology.
Cool, thank you. I will get rid of this thing. Cool, so having sort of walked around the floor yesterday and spoken to a lot of you, it's just sort of soliciting questions and what's on folks' mind as we think about businesses and VR. One of the recurring themes was, how do I get started? How does it actually work? Like, I know how to go and build an app and put it in the Oculus store and get it out to consumers, but if I want to engage with businesses, like big companies that seem sometimes impenetrable, how do I go about it? How are big companies thinking about VR? And so, I think one of the things to sort of touch on and discuss is sort of, how is everyone out there implementing and doing VR? So maybe, Ioana, maybe we start with you. Sort of, tell us a little bit about the process that P&G uses, how about implementing VR projects, how you scope those out, who do you use, how can folks potentially in the audience think about engaging even with a brand or a company like yourselves?
Sure. So we consider the VR, we call it virtual solutions. So we offer it as a service internally to our business. So we don't go outside, but it's for the sales department or the consumer research department. And we organize the whole virtual machine behind it, which I'm running and helping delivering. We are doing this in collaborations with our partner, who is Accenture. They have a huge team that is working for us, and we deliver the base, what we call the base SKU, so the solutions that you have seen in the demo. In terms of so this is kind of the base running machine. We do a lot of reviews globally, so it's $60 billion company, so you can imagine the amount of customer engagement or consumer research we're running every single day. In terms of the innovation, more to your question on how companies come and approach us, there are kind of two ways. We are always, me and my colleagues, looking for new things on the market, what's up there, the reason why we're here as well today. But also, we are very much trusting our partners. So I'm sitting with Accenture every week, discussing our base operations, but also, what else do we want to do? What are our challenges? How do we go about it? They know inside out the business and our challenges, and then they can bring as well on the table what is good for us. So if you are like a small company or startup, you come to us with an idea. I'm interested about the idea. The one challenge that you will always have is about scale. Okay, $60 billion company, 100,000 employees, right? It's a huge scale challenge that you'll have there. And normally we work with our partners to bring that one up. So you'll have maybe two entry points. One is approaching us to say, okay, I have a cool product, but I'll always work with the partners to make sure that we can scale that to the level we want.
Got it. So Derek, let's maybe come to you. I mean, you sort of described the Walmart thing as a bit serendipitous. Tell us a little bit how you're thinking about cracking it. I mean, cracking it into companies like Walmart, and then I want ultimately my goal here is to like broker some set of deals.
Yeah,
amongst all of you guys to keep pushing things forward. Right, so I'm curious to hear your perspective on how people are thinking about it. As well.
So without giving away the playbook to the world right here in this room and anybody that ends up watching this, it's hard. It's really hard. The Walmart relationship was exactly what you said. It was serendipitous. It was the result of the success we had in sports, and it was an equivalent at Walmart who looks for innovative things and says, I think we could do that to help make our employees better. Lucky for us, all the academic research says that this works on your brain. So the fact that we could walk in there and talk about all we're doing in sports, and oh, by the way, the scale that we had in sports, that was really, really valuable. And then once the Walmart relationship was solidified, And now we could start reaching out to other companies or leveraging the success we had in sports. And not to brag, but we've gotten a lot of inbounds over the last 2 years as a result of the success in sports. And then we could lay out, hey, we're doing this for Walmart. We're at 200 different locations for Walmart, 100 different locations for sports. That matters.
So in some ways, sort of building that credibility through one particular niche or vertical, and then parlaying that, sort of in a classic, how do you land and expand within an enterprise thing.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say too is these are massive companies. It's hard. I mean, you're talking to one part of the company that doesn't talk to the other, and we've actually had 5 people from P&G reach out to us, and they don't know each other. I mean, that's hard. So how do you navigate that effectively? And sometimes it kills deals, and other times it is land and expand.
Yeah, I was wondering how have you had to adopt your approach and the way you think about engaging with these kinds of companies from your roots?
Slowly. Sports is a very defined sales cycle. If they say they want to roll, you're on the field 2 days later. If P&G says they want to go, you're in a 5-month legal process, and you can't talk to them until it's signed, right? So it's a lot different, and we had to actually change our expectations for how fast things would move relative to what we saw previously.
So, Marcus, maybe some thoughts there. How many folks do you have dedicated to VR internally at Audi, and what is the sort of network of developers that you use?
I would say what is equal to the situation here to connect people who are fascinated and enthusiastic about VR and its possibilities are really well connected inside Audi. So it's the same kind of family, very open-minded family feeling as we have here. And that's helpful. And it's not what, I mean, it's at Audi, all people are well connected with the brand, but if you have also one common idea or common technology which you want to push into the company, that connects even more. And we have it for the design, or some people who are investigating how they can use it for the design process, then for the development process and so on. And I'm personally focused currently at least on the customer side, on the point of sale, but maybe also in other parts in the future where the customer can have some advantage by virtual or augmented reality. And for us, the big challenge in the company is to have a process from the beginning with the same engine, hopefully, any day or someday in the future, to the sales, point of sales in the end. So currently, we're in this situation where we're sitting together and trying to harmonize our whole process to use VR as often as good we can with all its power as a new interface, visualizing digital data, absolutely natural, finally. And just to complete this, I guess it was easy to convince people also at Audi, also the board, to use this technology to invest millions finally very early, 4 years ago, because VR on one side has a high rational value, but it also touches the emotional side. And this combination makes it easy to convince people, especially at an innovative brand as Audi is.
So Andy, you have a slightly probably different challenge than Derek, right? You've got Cisco, you've got the enterprise sales force, you've got the decades of relationships and the contracts and the NDAs and the papers. Like, what are the challenges that you as an enterprise app developer working at a big company, like what type of challenges do you face in trying to crack into an enterprise?
Well, my group is a little different in that we're in a small kind of forward-thinking group inside of the larger enterprise group. What we get hit with a lot with things like this project and these kinds of technologies is, we get the skeptics inside who, are used to the ways we've done things before and the technologies we've used before. And in Cisco's case, we make collaboration software and hardware, and we have a lot of 2D video and things like that. And so we get a crowd that says, virtual reality is not going to replace 2D video, so why are we expending effort on it? Or there's a concern there, and that's just a process. To get through those things is just a process of us kind of getting people acclimated and used to it, and the idea that it's a complementary technology, which I think we're trying to show with some of our integrations, to show that you're always going to have these kind of hybrid experiences where someone's in a conference room, but someone else is at home, and that person at home can easily put on, virtual reality headsets and things like that. So it's really a process of, of getting people comfortable with it through doing demos, having people in, and all that sort of thing.
It's interesting because that theme kind of came out last night when we were talking across all of you in sort of different incarnations, right? Whether it's you who needs to go find the folks inside of these companies like Marcus who are the champions, you know, or you've got to go sell people, or Marcus, you having to go sell, you know, internally as well, right? So it feels like there's a lot of, you know, selling and convincing and things that go on, you know, across the board. I want to pick up on one thing, Marcus, that you sort of alluded to a little bit was sort of tools, right? And sort of, you know, how do we best serve, you know, businesses, and what are some of the differences? So Hamza, I'm curious, you know, how easy was it to reproduce that theater, and you know, where are the tools lacking, and where are they sort of not lacking today in your perspective?
So with the theater itself, in the early stages, we were approached by the architect with one basic problem, which they were having difficulty conveying to the developer and other parties involved, which was the size. The biggest problem they had was, okay, this is not going to be a large enough theater to accommodate the people. So they approached us with the first problem, which was, hey, you came to us, you showed us a couple of projects on the Rift. Could you work with us on reproducing this theater? So I think the most amazing part about the theater aspect was when the developer actually tried the headset the first time. The first thing she said was actually, oh, wow, you know what, this is a lot larger than I anticipated. And right there and then, although it was a plain white model at that point in time, little issues were picked up on the balustrades being too short, because you could point at a seat, sit there, and see the balustrades being too high, blocking the view. So things like that really started coming into play. And then we were commissioned to do the project right from start to end. So that particular project generally was very easy for us to do, because the architect immediately, the moment they tried it on, they were like, ah, I know the project, I know what I want to do with this, this is some great technology. But with other architectural practices, because everyone has a very rigid way of working, it is difficult. But I guess for anyone who's planning on getting into that side, whether it's architecture, construction, interior design, the one thing I'll always advise is do a demonstration. Don't talk much, just come and go and show them something that they can relate to, and that's it, you have them.
And talk a little bit about maybe the actual tools and the infrastructure, right? We talked a little bit about sort of how do you manage documents, and how do you keep records, and you know, folks are building their own offshoots of engines and stuff. I'm sort of curious to hear from all of you sort of what, you know, what the sort of the state of the technology really for enterprise VR, right? Is it ready today? Is it good enough? Like what more do we need?
I think for our side, of course, there are a few things that can be improved, whether it's the display quality in the future. Of course, when you get higher resolutions, the quality of the textures and things will improve. But at this early stage, at least for architecture and construction and things, I think it's pretty much there. It's doing some companies are doing some pretty amazing stuff already. But if I were to just be really, really choosy and pick on one thing, which is the feedback that we get, is probably display quality.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the hardware, I think that's the elephant in the room. That's pretty obvious, right? Can it be lighter, faster, clearer? We all know that. That's going to come.
You did see the keynote yesterday, right?
I did, yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's going to happen.
We're trying.
It's already happening, yeah, and that's fine. There are trade-offs with how we can make certain things better. It makes other things worse. It's fine. Outside of that, I could sit up here and nitpick all day, and I've given Oculus feedback on certain things that could be better as it relates to what we do, but it's ready. I mean, we meet with companies all the time, and we say, don't wait 3 years till the headset is crystal clear HD, because it's ready now. And everything we're doing outside of what, you know, Oculus provides, hardware, software-wise, is software, and it's data, and it's content management, and it's the process by which you build the content, and it's how you integrate into the organization. This may be disappointing to the room. Our success in training, and probably a lot of other companies like us, or companies trying to, you know, get into big corporations, honestly has nothing to do with VR. The experience itself is really good, and it's not that differentiable from company to company. It's how do you scale? It's how do you integrate into the organization? It's actually a lot of fuzzy stuff. It's how do you provide data and analytics and feedback that has nothing to do with in the headset. In the headset's really good right now, and it's only going to get better, and that's exciting. So the challenge is, and you know, the tools are there. They're just going to keep getting better. But how do you actually integrate in and make this valuable and usable? That's how we win, right? That's how this really takes off. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Am I speaking your language down here? Yeah. You guys know. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
It might also depend a bit on the time lengths you're targeting for users in virtual reality as well. You know, I know we talked about that a little bit before, but you know, with what we're doing, we're kind of working our way up to the 30-minute meeting sort of thing, right? And we know that right now, not many people want to spend a solid hour in virtual reality, you know, but we know that's on a curve that's gonna change, you know. But everyone's probably got kind of different targets for what they, what their experiences are targeting in terms of the time.
I guess if you take a look at our situation where we use it, normally our customers use the VR headset for maybe 5 up to 10 minutes in the maximum, and they're hosted or guided by a person doing this experience, and they have their partner with themselves at the dealership in this time. And there's a challenge, of course, that we have a relatively isolating experience at this moment, and that's also a reason why we have a concept that they don't use it the whole time during the process. And of course, at this dealership situation, it's completely different than in a meeting, virtual meeting, something like this. And this is maybe also a wish I want to address to Oculus. I really well understand the focus on the mobile headsets right now and then support it also. But in the future, I would wish that the next generation maybe of the Rift will have an own version which is optimized for business purposes, meaning of in a sales situation. For example, the head strap. The head strap is perfect if you want to play a game for maybe an hour or more. But if you want to use it very shortly and you won't destroy your hairs, for me it's not a problem, but maybe someone else, there would be better if we don't need this head strap in any case, but currently it's necessary also from a technical side. And yeah, I would love if we find a solution together to come closer to our needs. But for the moment, it's great, and yeah, we use it, and we have really good experiences, meanwhile, from the first time.
Maybe I'll address 2 points on the scale to your point. So what we like about the Rift or the mobile VR is that you can take it to your customers. Instead of your customers coming to your offices where you already have it installed, you can take it to them and you can have an on-spot customer meeting, right? So imagine a salesperson setting up an Oculus Rift, okay? I need to have somebody always going with them or having a techie person being there. So something that it's easy to install, it's not yet there. That's one. Second, in terms of the platform, we do prepare a lot of things in advance for our meetings, and when are these top-to-top meetings, it's very important that we are ready and with a high quality and so on. Sometimes salespeople or brand people want to do last-minute changes. Nobody gets on the programming and say, okay, let me move this thing there. So again, there is somebody behind that needs to be there, that needs to do the changes, because it's not meant to be user-friendly. So in a future world, I would like to have like this more, self-serve, so that I can empower all of myself, and that will be, even broadening to the teams we have today, so I can empower those people to do their business in a very easy way. Right, so.
No, please go ahead.
Just to add one thing which has been really quite amazing about the Rift specifically is the fact that it can really work as a good workstation sort of accessory. So for an architect, for example, you're using different sort of 3D modeling software, but you've got the 2 sensors there and the Rift just sitting there. So while you're working around, you're using it, you can, of course, take the Rift, put it on, try it there, have a look around, take it off, and then start remodeling again. So one of the things that I think a lot of architects come to us demanding the Rift is for that reason, that you can sit down and you can use it. And of course, for them, the fact that even, touching on your point there, the fact that they usually have their laptop and there's 2 cases, but setting it up is so easy. It's sort of almost like a plug-and-play solution, which for architecture has really, really helped out. And of course, with Oculus Go coming into play, that really makes it even better. No phone needed. You just have the headset and you can go to your meetings. You can even go to site and see, it could be a spot where there's nothing there at present. You put on the headset and suddenly it's all visualized in VR, and it's all 3D, which is quite amazing. So.
The fine print I would add to that though is this is plug and play and go for this room. Yeah. Not for the rest of the world. Yeah. So that's really important.
I was going to ask, like, in the video, you show it rolling out to associates in store, and talk a little bit about how that happened. I mean, the video is great, but tell us the story behind it.
Yeah. So we when we first started working with Walmart and we were starting a soft rollout to 30 of the 200 academies, we visited every one of them and we white gloved it and we made sure nothing went wrong. And then we took those learnings to say, all right, how can we do this more efficiently so we don't have to visit all of them? Side note, we ended up visiting all 200 because we felt that was the best thing to do. But when we started showing up, when they had already gotten our Pelican case with the Rift, the computer, all the peripherals, and sometimes we'd walk in and they'd be like, I'm good. And we just wasted $1,000 in a day of time. And that's because we made it so simple. And again, I could nitpick on some of the things in Oculus that could be better, but we dove in to understand what was really effective and what wasn't, and we actually kind of tweaked, have our own build of what would make this up and running in 6 minutes. And we walked into a Walmart a month ago, and somebody said, see that video conference equipment in the corner? I can't get it to work, so it's been sitting there for a year, and I just got VR working in 6 minutes. That's where this has to go, and a lot of the stuff that this room and this panel thinks are easy aren't easy for normal people.
But it sounds like there's opportunity.
Absolutely.
Because the platform vendors and the hardware vendors are still pretty focused on consumer, and that's sort of in their DNA.
Yeah.
Taking my Oculus hat off for a minute. So in terms of how do you implement ease of use, serve, maintain?
Critical.
I sort of even heard I wish I had like a PowerPoint for VR so I could switch my presentation at the last minute, based on sort of needs or what people want. It feels like those are all potential opportunities for folks in this room to think about. What about workflows? We talked a little bit last night about sort of automating and working through various workflows in VR, right? And maybe you're touching on that a little bit with training, but others have experience around the actual process of creating and deploying these things that folks in this room could think about, could help tackle, and potentially build businesses around.
So if we started 4.5 years ago, together at this time with the, I guess, 15 people of Oculus. So there was no remote, there was no best practices, nothing. And we started a lot of investigations by ourselves and was completely unexperienced, of course. So it wasn't very interesting for us. And we tried many things. And the first things we tried to figure out, just to give an example, is do want people at a dealership situation explore by themselves, meaning also manipulate the car by themselves and change their position and so on, or do they expect to become guided? And of course, if you make such tests, you always hope that you get a clear answer, a meaning of 90% preferable. Of course, it was 50-50. And so we had to go both ways and find a good solution for both. But I guess try and error was an important part at this stage, at least, and we learned a lot together also with all other companies and this community. And there are much things to explore in the future. How do we handle eye tracking and so on, which coming hopefully in the future. But yeah, this was an important part. It was more exploring new things than in all projects I did before for Audi, which was very motivating, of course, also from my side. Now we are more experienced and we have best practices and so on. I guess now it's a good, we have a good fundament, meanwhile, of knowledge to go to the next steps. So yeah, just only about the processes.
So one thing that I'm sort of picking up on here is ease of deployment, right, and sort of friction. And that sort of then, I think, in my mind, sort of blends into, well, do you use Rift or do you use a mobile product, right? Do you use the Tethered product where you've got massive amounts of compute and flexibility and crystal clear inside-out tracking, 6 degrees, outside-in tracking, et cetera? Or do you think about things like Santa Cruz and things like Oculus Go, which will have that inside-out tracking and be portable and deployable and instant on, and you you're ready to go, but you're sacrificing compute, right? How do you think about making those trade-offs as you look to serve your various constituents?
I think for what we're doing, we could probably sacrifice some measure of compute because the resolution of the models and things that we're using is probably a little low than for example, yours, Marcus. So I think that portability and that the idea that the VR device will become more personal, more like your phone or your laptop, I think is attractive for what we're trying to do for a business audience of people in meetings, collaborating, et cetera. And the idea that I don't have to set up and calibrate an environment is hugely attractive. I also think on the software workflow side that you were talking about a minute ago, I kind of see more of an opportunity there as well for, there's things like React VR and A-Frame that try to make it easy for existing web developers to get into virtual reality. I think there's more opportunity to develop tools like that further that particularly in enterprises can harness their large teams of web and mobile developers to start kind of dipping their toes into VR. New things like interacting around content and higher level capabilities for some of those libraries or new toolkits I think would be really useful.
Hamza, we were talking a little bit about this yesterday.
Yeah, so for our side, as we were talking yesterday, it's both of them really work hand in hand. So the way we work usually is start off a project using the Rift, and then from that angle, then of course port it to Samsung Gear, for example, and hopefully Oculus Go now. The only difference is the mobile platform is a bit static. It's more of a 360 panoramic shot with some overlays via Unity, and then Unreal, of course, has that feeling of doing everything. But I think for us, and especially for architecture, they both work hand in hand. And the option to add the Samsung Gear at a later stage is not, in terms of monetary value, it's not so difficult to achieve. So for us, in terms of workflow and things, we use both, and we push both as a whole package that, you can use this at your office, but you can also take this to a site and have a look around your model.
So we've used just about every piece of VR hardware in the last 2.5 years for a wide range of things that we've done by lots of different companies. Sorry.
You should.
And the key, though, as it relates to friction, is understanding the customer. And a lot of times, what sounds really good in theory, there's a mobile solution. I could have 1,000 mobile headsets for the price of 100 supercomputer headsets, for example, isn't actually the best way to go because there's little things like charging it. Like, what if it falls out of your briefcase? Okay, are people actually going to take this with them on the road, or are they going to leave it at home? Are we better off having the really expensive computer and awesome tethered headset plugged into the wall at all times where everybody knows where it is, or should we make this a mobile training solution in our world training? So those are the things that you really, really have to dive in with the customer. And then, as the VR expert, you need to then subtly but confidently push your expertise and opinion, knowing that, hey, if you go down this route, there's a tendency that the risk that it may break or it may not go well, and then it might be dead to you forever. So let's just make sure we put in what we know is going to work. So there's always trade-offs with understanding what the customer's needs are.
Cool. So, maybe we'll make sure we have enough time for questions here. One last sort of perspective from each of you. It's hard to believe this is only Oculus Connect 4. And thinking back to the first one where Rift wasn't even out, let alone Touch or consumer gear. In many ways we've come a long way. In many ways we're still starting out, right? As we sort of hear folks here talk about. What do each of you think we're going to be talking about at OC10?
Okay, so we had the discussion yesterday. It was one of the most interesting parts, I guess, of the talk. Really, my personal expectation in 6 years that we will maybe have not this Ray-Ban style combined augmented and VR glass as Mark showed last year. This will take longer, but I guess we will have a VR headset. I hope we will have an AR headset which has also mixed reality capabilities, which would be great for the sales experience and situation which I'm focused on. And of course, high resolution, eye tracking, all the things we all expect right now. And I guess, yeah, that will be amazing, and I'm really trustful that we will see all the things we were wishing ourselves we will see then, at least.
Yeah, I think I think we'll see better. So at OC10, we'll probably be talking about controllers less, although there may be some specialized use cases that we talked about where you really want that tactile response from a controller. But probably we'll have natural hand tracking that will be much more common. And then I think we'll be talking more about combined experiences across virtual reality and augmented or mixed reality, where you have some pass-through capabilities, whether it's optical or video or whatever, but we're able to those fields will start coming together a little more, and we'll be talking about new capabilities that are enabled by that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else care to venture a guess, or?
Mm-hmm. Maybe on my side, I don't know what will be the OC10, but what I will wish to. Maybe an integrated platform with like a push of a button. I should not care about the gear that I'm using. I should not care about the backbone engine that the asset is built on. It's just, it should be portable, it should be easy to use, it should be used by all my salespeople, and that should be like seamless. So that is my wish. We are getting there, and I think open source platform helps. I'm looking forward to see what's coming up.
And I think just to add to that, even on my perspective, I think, of course, agree completely about the VR and AR merging and becoming one thing, but I think about OC10, I don't think we'll probably have the mobile platform. I think even that will merge into one headset that will be able to manage both things, which Santa Cruz is already on its way to do, and it's just going to get better and better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with where AR is going, or has the potential to go, we very easily could be in a minority report situation as it relates to tracking retinas and truly knowing who's who at all times and things that live on our face. That's scary and exciting at the same time. I actually, though, I don't think we're going to be as far as people think we will, only because it's been, 3-ish years, and a lot of things that we said would happen to the display and untethered, aren't even close, and aren't even close that we're not making progress, but to true human vision, right? So we could all be really optimistic, but on the other hand, it may just take some time, and it may be OC20 before we see some of these ideas.
Well, we'll be here for OC20 as well, so don't worry.
Yeah.
We'll start out. If folks have questions and they want to start stepping up to the mic. Look, sort of listening to each of you speak, my sort of takeaways, it feels very much that enterprises and businesses are doing really great stuff with VR, and there's way more to come. For developers, it feels like there's a real opportunity here to make an impact, lots of learnings to be gained, and money to be made in this space. Over whiskey last night, I was able to extract by the end of the night rough numbers from the panelists on even what their yearly spend looks like just on this stage, and my assessment, no one will sort of cop to this, but it feels like there's at least $20 million a year that just the folks on this panel are spending on VR. My guess is it's probably higher than that, and if that's just 3 or 4 folks on the panel, my sense is that there's a lot of opportunities out there, and we all look forward as an industry, I think, to helping to accelerate there. So I think on that note, if folks have questions.
Hi. So I wonder, as we shift towards the enterprise market for VR, I kind of thought that the OC10 conversation was going to go to cybersecurity. I wonder how much we're thinking about cyber, especially when we think about enterprise collaboration and the whole bar fight around collaboration on the cloud. Are these types of things that you're thinking about, and what are you doing about them?
Yeah, I think, from my perspective, it's definitely something that obviously we think about with collaboration today, and how, businesses trusting us with their data, with their conversations and their messages to each other. And I think it'll just, continue, and it'll be a point of contention, with, in VR. We have fought this sort of cloud versus on-prem battle, and are in many ways still in the middle of it. And we might see similar things in virtual reality, just depending on the specifics of the technologies and how the data is flowing through them and those sorts of things. I do think we'll start seeing, as people like Cisco start developing more in these spaces, we'll see more of a drive for requirements for things like end-to-end encryption and those sorts of things. They'll start cropping up.
Hi, I had a question about for startups approaching larger enterprises such as yourselves. What kind of advice would you guys offer for someone who is a startup essentially and is trying to develop a price point to be able to develop for you guys without underpricing ourselves or overpricing ourselves to be competitive?
I would say, for me, as you all here fell in love with the technology, to approach us, you need to fall in love with the problem. So you need to really address the business problem. We will not invest in something just for fun. We'll invest in something that brings an actual value, either automation, saving, engagement, and so on. And I see many of the companies coming to us and present their cool toys without even Googling what we are doing, right? So that is maybe the first step. Try to understand what will be our challenges, and then how can you address that? And from there, if you have even a good concept, a mock-up that speaks to us, then from there we can talk. But don't come with fancy stuff that doesn't even speak to us, because we will not have patience for that.
Well, one advice I want to give to startups as well. You guys are so innovative, have great ideas, but if you come to a deal with a huge company, it's always a challenge that the big company is thinking about scalability. That's what we discussed yesterday as well. And if you have a great idea, but you're only 4 persons, then you should start looking for a partner by yourself who can scale this idea, maybe in a dimension which is needed by a big company, instead of give the big company the need to look for this partner. Then you have it in your hand, and that's small advice from my side.
So the questions come up a little bit, maybe answered partially, but I'm curious on the scale of these projects. Can you talk either in dollars or in man years or in anything that we can grok a little bit? Can you give us an idea of what some of the investment is into some of these projects, which are all beautiful? Thank you very much for showing them to us.
My ears are wide open.
It took a lot of whiskey last night, even to come up with that figure.
No, I guess it's a good question, and we expected this question, honestly. I can tell you, for our project, the project team was 20 to 30 person, depends on the project phase, for 5 years. So it's $1 million investment, but we expect it was a really good one.
I'm not going to obviously talk about what we charge, but we're not unlike a lot of LMS companies or a lot of other training-related things that are already in-house. We have customers spending in the tens of thousands, and we have customers spending in the low millions based on how much scale there is. So very SaaS-based as well as content development-based.
And for us as a startup, again, we do both kinds of projects. We do stuff focused on just volume, which can turn around and you can produce a room in just a few hours, or it could be an actual scheme which would take a team of people to build together. So I can't go over the numbers and things, but just to give you an idea, a little room of just one size could maybe take just 5 or 6 hours to produce. And if you go on volume, you can do tons and thousands of projects like that. So you can get an idea of what kind of numbers we're talking about when it comes to volume. On very bespoke stuff, that's all really up and down. So it's hard to pinpoint, I suppose.
I think we have time for maybe one last question. I apologize. It looks like there's a few lingering, but I'm sure maybe you guys have some time to hang around as we get the hook here.
I work in architecture. I'm the lead VR developer for my team. I just got a question. Besides your own demo, what's your own favorite VR demo right now?
In terms of, I guess, besides our own stuff, I suppose. There are a couple of other companies and platforms that exist right now, which I'm sure you're pretty well aware of. We're developing a very similar platform that automates the process. So I think it would, in terms of the actual demos, that's hard to say, but I would sort of pivot that towards different platforms that automate the process. That's something that gets us excited, and that's something that we're also working on. So we just fully automate the process for the architect and the interior designer, so it can spit out a VR model, and you can sort of walk around it, and this is all happening via the cloud. Okay. So, thanks.
So I want to thank you all for attending. Please join me in thanking Andy, Ioana, Hamza, Marcus, Derek, and did I miss someone? Sorry. I'm getting like hooked, so. So please join me in thanking the panelists, and thank you for your support.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having us.